Hey, it's Thursday night. Welcome everybody to episode 44 of the Hammer and Nayles Show. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. To my side is my partner, Jessie Naylor. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I'm doing great. We got a Kyle Juszczyk show on deck. 44. I love it.
There you go. Perfect. This it should be that means we're gonna be a Pro Bowl type of show tonight. Going to be a big one. And a lot of stuff going on. I know it's off season, but the 49ers, they're always a part of the conversation year round. They give us content to talk about in one way or another. Yesterday it was Steve Young. During Super Bowl week, it was Joe Montana. Yesterday it was Steve Young. Let's just jump right into it. I don't know if you heard that or if you've gone over to the Press Democrat and read what I put down, or gone over to KNBR and listened to what they had to say over there. But Steve Young was on yesterday afternoon on the TKB show. He does every Wednesday during the season. And he made some comments on a variety of things because they were asking him actually about would you rather go with Trey Lance or bring in a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, kind of like the discussion that you and I had recently. And here's what Trey Lance Steve Young had to say about Trey Lance. Now, Trey Lance, we don't know, and Trey doesn't know. If Trey was ready, Trey would have played. Trey needs to get ready this offseason. This needs to be the biggest boot camp ever in history to get him ready to be expansive. I told you when I said we'd have to watch him go from 2 to 10. This fall is not going from 6 to 10. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a patient process, but we cannot wait for that. We've got to get him ready, and we've got 6 months to do it. So those were the comments that Young made. And I found those interesting. When I listened to those last night, it sounded a lot like what Joe Montana had to say during Super Bowl week.
Yeah, I definitely did. I think, we were talking about this a little bit backstage, and it just kind of hit me as you read through them again. I think the reason that they're not taken as harshly is because Montana said it's his opinion and players in the locker room's opinion. And Montana also didn't end it with, well, he has time to get ready, right? Which is kind of a point that I had made. I was like, well, we don't know if Joe Montana's right or not, but let's assume he is. If that's the case, he doesn't have to be ready today in the middle of February. He has to be ready at the beginning of September. And so what Steve Young is saying is, hey, if he's not ready, then he needs to get ready. And they've got 7 months to do it. So they got to figure it out, and they got to figure it out quick. So I think that's maybe why it's not taken as harshly. But you're right. I mean, he's saying basically the same thing that Montana said as far as Trey not being ready. And if he was ready, he would have played. I don't know. It's just hard because you've obviously got some professional athletes coming out and saying these things. But then you got guys who are actual insiders, and their job is to find out this information for real. And whether that's Wagner, that's Glazer, that's Trotter, who have all come out and said the exact opposite, that the 49ers do think he's ready. In fact, Trotter came out today and said that there was a real thought before he hurt his finger that he might even start week 1. And then when it came down to week 18, that they had a real decision to make. And they basically just said, hey, we're going to give Jimmy his one last hurrah. He got us here. Like, let's give him his time and see how this goes. So I don't know. It's tough to know what to believe. And then the flip side of that is, Jack, it's all in what you want to believe, right? Like you, for example, you've been pretty adamant that he should sit this year. I've been pretty adamant that he should start this year. And so I think it's natural for people to think the way that we do, to find the silos and to find the things that that back up their claims, and so we've got this back and forth this whole time. And you're right. The 49ers don't stop with the content train because it just keeps on coming. I love it.
Yeah. And I'm going to say that I've been saying the same thing that all these guys have been saying. I've been writing it for the better part of the last month and a half, 2 months. And it was pretty simple to see what was taking place in Santa Clara and the reasonings behind Lance not starting week 1. And if you go back and you listen to what Kyle Shanahan said, and something that I tweeted out after the Arizona game, I think it was around the time of the Indianapolis game, there was a real chance that that Trey Lance might have started the Arizona game if he hadn't hurt his knee against the Arizona game, or against Arizona. They would have started against Indianapolis the week after. Shanahan said that it was pretty obvious that there was a decision to be made heading into week 18 because of the way that Lance played in week 17. And you and I on this show said the same thing that you just mentioned that other folks have said, was that there was a decision to made, and by that point they decided to just continue to roll on with Trey Lance. But I told you while we were on here that I couldn't argue. If you wanted me to argue against Trey Lance starting, I couldn't have done it based off of what I saw in week 17, because I had seen growth from week 5 to that point. I had seen growth from Lance from where he was in July and August, when we all got to see him, the last time we really got to see him in extended playing time. So it's not new to me. I just found it interesting with the Joe Montana and the Steve Young thing. I think the biggest reason why Steve Young is not catching the heat that Joe Montana caught was basically he talks this stuff all the time. It's weekly. He's doing it on the radio. He's doing it on ESPN on a regular basis. He's been very pro Trey Lance at different times. And the other piece that I think is the biggest as to why Jimmy Garoppolo or why Joe Montana got hit more than Steve Young is because Joe Montana said that they should keep Jimmy Garoppolo. If he had just said that, I don't think that I'm hearing that he's not ready. I don't think that you have the backlash. It's the bringing up of Jimmy Garoppolo that creates as you mentioned, the silos of the two different groups to kind of, raise get their dander up and want to argue it out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that because they both did bring up Tom Brady, right? They both said if you have a chance to bring in Tom Brady, you do that basically. So, yeah, man, it's tough. It's it's an interesting part of the offseason. And what's crazy is I thought, oh man, once Garoppolo's traded, like the dust's going to settle and we can kind of get back to normal. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Like this whole thing has been very, very, very crazy and a fun, wild ride to say the very least.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, and this is what hit me driving home to get on the show with you, is that, the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. This is very similar to what we were dealing with in 2013. Mm-hmm. So, they had the switch over in 2012, midway through the season from Kaepernick from Smith to Kaepernick, and they went to the Super Bowl, but there was still the pro Alex Smith crowd that was not at all on board with Colin Kaepernick up until the trade happened, when Smith got sent to Kansas City, and they still were in Alex Smith's court, into the season and beyond. They even now you have people that'll argue that they should have kept Alex Smith and never should have traded him instead of moving on to Colin Kaepernick. So it's the same. We're going through that same cycle again, and I'm ready for it to be I'm already ready for OTAs and everything else to start, so we can move beyond this. Really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. But again, we can't be mad at the content that is driving for us. Definitely helping us out, making our jobs easy. And let me ask you this: where were you on? Like, what was your stance back then? Obviously, similar situation with Kaepernick and Alex Smith. Like, do you remember what your stance was? 8 years ago during that time.
My stance was similar to now. I was ready to move on. I saw the other guy. I liked Colin Kaepernick, and I felt like it was time to move over to him. He just taken him to the Super Bowl. I didn't want them to move off from Alex Smith if there was a way. I wanted them to keep both because I felt like they needed to have that guy in the locker room to help him. And I kind of feel that way now, but at the same time, that it's not possible because of the salary cap, and these guys are competitors, and they don't want to just sit on the bench just to be a teacher to somebody. So it wasn't going to work out. So I was fine with it. I had a lot of fun with it over at the newspaper and in the comment section at the Press Democrat during the time with Grant and so on. But you knew what was coming, and it was the right move for the 49ers to move on to Colin Kaepernick. It just didn't work out for him long term, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And it wasn't really because Colin Kaepernick never developed. It was a lot of other things that took place.
Yeah, for sure. Sersky's comment here. Sersky's my guy. a lot of Twitter space together, but saying that 95.7 the game, said that they spoke with someone in Brady's camp, said that Brady isn't coming to San Francisco because he has a grudge against them. That's
Mhm.
not the first people that I've heard say that. I heard actually somebody was saying, and I haven't seen it or confirmed it myself, so I don't know if it's true, but that he was on like another shop show or whatever and was talking about it himself. So I don't know. Yeah, it does sound like that door's shut and he is holding a bit of a grudge. We'll see.
I saw that mentioned as far as you're talking about like the shop, but I think that was back to the original. You're
They were
going to
going
that
back
guy
to that
over
one
me
again.
kind of thing. Yeah,
Okay.
but this one I think came up on the Willard and Dibbs show over at 95.7 from what I saw on Twitter.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean it could be. I could understand why a guy like Tom Brady wouldn't want to come
Yeah.
to San Francisco after wanting to come here originally, and then what happened there. So you know the likelihood of Tom Brady becoming a 49er was always thin when we look at it now as far as him coming out of retirement. If it does, great, but I would never put any money on it. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. I would put money on if he came out of retirement that we would be the one team he would come to, but I think he's probably going to just be done, like right off into the sunset. It's over for him.
I agree with you, and I'm going to say here as we roll into the next topic, I don't agree with what Joe Montana and Steve Young are saying, and part of that's because of what we've seen of him. I had this conversation with you before. I had last week when we talked about the Montana comments, and even now with what Young said. I reported it today because I thought it was newsworthy to have him say that because he was talking about a lot of different things that have been in the news cycle recently. I don't agree with them. I think that Trey Lance is ready to start. Is he going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo week one? I don't know, but I have a really good feeling that he's going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo by week 18 of year two. I don't feel like he would have. I don't think. I was asked this question today, and let's just talk about this before we move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
I was asked, do they get to the Super Bowl if Trey Lance is the quarterback? I don't think so. I don't think they would have made the playoffs if Trey Lance had been the starter. I just feel like there was a couple of games early in the season that at least one that they still would have lost. I don't think they would have beat Philadelphia with Trey at that point. And if they, you know, so that gets them to 9-8 if everything else plays out the way they did. I mean, I know you can make the argument that they don't lose to Tennessee with Lance as quarterback and things like that. I just don't feel like they would have made the playoffs. I think they would have come up somewhere along the way. There would have been a couple of games that would have been lost, and I don't know if there's too many that I'd say would have been flipped the other way.
Yeah, I don't know about like the Eagles game. I actually could probably agree with you that early on. But then I look the one that I feel strongly about had Lance been the starter the whole year that they would have won is the Colts game. Especially with that weather. Not being able to really run and stick with the run game. Jimmy's arm just wasn't able to really cut through that weather at all. And I just feel like that's somewhere where Lance could have. See, this is the thing. It's like I wish we can go in a time machine and just watch it play out, just to see, right? Like, because there's no right answer. Like, there is no right answer. Like, there's no way to say for sure. Yes, they would have made the playoffs. No, they wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's impossible. It's impossible, and there's no right answer, and we'll never know. And that's what bugs me even more because I would love to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think the thing here to really take away from the 2021 season when it comes to Lance and Garoppolo is whether you're a pro Lance or pro Garoppolo or in the middle, wherever you were, the 49ers still got to the NFC Championship game. They were 3 points away from getting in there. I think the quarterback was, there was a quarterback, there was a dropped interception. There was a few things, reasons why they didn't get over the hump in the final game. But they still almost accomplished every goal that they'd set out for themselves. But they were able to have a strong season with Garoppolo. They were able to develop Lance, and I think they're going to go into 2022 better for it. And we'll see how it plays out. I just feel like we're going to see some really good things out of Trey Lance in this upcoming season. And then in terms of his readiness, it was funny because last night, I think everybody's seen these by now. Those practice throws that Javier Vega put out on Twitter late last night really got folks fired up.
Yeah, well, I mean, as they should, right? Like that's exciting stuff, and the timing of it is, and I don't know if you get, I don't know if this is public information, but let's just say it was around the time those throws were around the time that Fred Warner came out and publicly stated without really being asked that Lance was looking really good in practice.
Mhm.
And this practice that is shown in these videos is around that time. So that actually is adding up and making a lot of sense as to why that would have been said by Fred at that point. Now, obviously, it's practice, right? But what I take away from it, especially with that throw rolling to the left, and sure, he may have been sacked there or whatever. That's beside the point. But for me, what I take away is, and everybody keeps saying, well, we know that Lance can make these throws, but can he be consistent on the other throws? And my thing back to them is, yes, we know that he physically can make these throws, but does he have the creativity in his game to actually make those throws? I think that was still up for question. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. Like, he does have that creativity. He does have that in his bag. Because one thing that we both said about Lance is, even though he has all the tools, he's actually a pretty conservative quarterback. So to see him make throws like that is very exciting, because it is in his actual arsenal and he's willing to use it. And so chances are we're going to see that come out at some point next year, maybe multiple times. So, that for me is like the biggest thing that I took away. Of course, I knew physically he could do it, but is he there mentally, and is that actually a part of how he wants to play football? That's what I thought was super cool, because it's not just a big arm. And the other thing that I took away is that's at least that throw in particular, maybe six guys I can count in the league that can actually physically pull that off. And so he does have some of those special attributes. I remember, early on in the season, people were questioning, how athletic is he? I just don't see it. And can he actually pull those things off at this level? And I think the answer is a resounding yes, with what you've seen in games and then seeing that. And let's not forget, you look at some of those throws, Jimmy Ward was right there on a couple of them. Like, those throws were with Jimmy Ward, against backup receivers. So, he's doing some good things. But at the end of the day, it is still practice. We do need to see the consistency from him. And, but if nothing else, people should at least be excited about seeing those types of things.
Yeah, and for me, I had a little bit different reaction, at least to the first couple, the ones that came out last night, because those were plays that were really nice throws. The first one where he's going to his left, getting it over, that was a really nice one. The one where he goes out to his right, that's a good one. For me, and I tweeted this out, those were the things that we saw in training camp, though. We saw him making those plays in August. And they were reported at that point. And that's part of why the 49ers were getting, I think, excited about him, was he'd come in and he knew the offense. They saw some of his ability to make plays and do things like that. And so we've seen him do that. So those first two were they didn't get me. I mean, they get you excited because they're cool plays, but they weren't like, oh, this guy's ready to play kind of things. But then you look at the last one, the one that came out today, and I think that one he's throwing it from the pocket. You don't see where he is on the play. You just see the ball going through the air. So you don't really see the full play. But that one, to me, if he's throwing that ball out of the pocket, which I assume he is, that's the one that gets me excited, because that's showing that he's making the plays from the pocket and he's put in it. I mean, that's a dart on a deep corner route. That's a heck of a throw right there. And you put what you saw in those videos with what we saw from him in week 5, and then we see what we saw from him in week 17, and it matches up to a guy that can make all the plays in this offense and make plays that the current quarterback from 2021 couldn't. There's definitely reason to be excited. And I've been telling you for a long time, even when we were having an argument about him needing to play in the season, that he was going to be fine once 2022 comes around. And I think that kind of shows a little bit of that direction.
Yeah, definitely. That throw that you're talking about is incredible. It's between Norman and Ward. It's just that throw is incredible. For me though, like, Jack, I know that you're talking about some of those throws that were done in camp, but I didn't physically see those throws, right? And I think a lot of people didn't physically see them. And so that's where the excitement comes from. And, that one throw where he is going to the left, I think it showed a lot. It showed, obviously, creativity, arm strength, but it also shows touch. I mean, that's a throw over a defender. It shows that touch. It shows that quick release. So it shows a lot of the things in one throw that people had questions about. It doesn't mean that those things are perfect or fixed or are not still being worked on, but that you see those things, and then you hear that he's going to work with Beck this offseason, at least in the beginning of the offseason. These are
Mhm.
all things that are like, okay, going back to Steve Young's comments, he needs to get ready. Well, I feel like they're doing everything they can to make sure that he's about as ready as he can be for a guy that played only 2 games in the last 2+ years. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and to your point, real quick, I mean, there are a lot of things that you said that I agree with. There is definitely there. He has room to grow. They have a plan, and I'm really excited to see them execute it. I think going into next year, again, I've always been fine with him sitting because he's going to come in 2022, and there's going to be nothing that he hasn't seen before, other than what it's like to be at a Super Bowl. But he's going to know what training camp, what to expect. He's going to know what to expect all throughout the regular season. He's going to know what going all the way to the championship game is like. So that whole process isn't going to be anything that's new to him. So he's not going to be learning the process. He's going to know the processes, and it's just going to be about him getting on the field and stepping up and making the plays. And then in terms of him going down to Southern California, that's the next piece, right? That's where he needs to start to grow. And I'm going to throw this one up here because Luke's right. And this was talked about during the season, that his 3/4 throwing motion and how he lowers his hips while moving in the pocket has me thinking there's going to be lots of bat downs despite the fact that he's tall. And that proved itself out as well. He did have a number of passes knocked down. I know that Eric Branch wrote an article about this, about how he was one of the higher percentages in the league in terms of bat downs when he's been on the field. And I don't remember when that article was written, but it was accurate. And Luke's mentioning that here.
yeah,
So
absolutely. And that's been a thing, right? Like
mm-hmm.
we knew about that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the batted balls, that's definitely going to be an issue. So that's something to think about, and that's why he's going down and working on it. And he has 6 months to really get that figured out. I know some of that time is going to be back up here in Santa Clara. And then Celts Chronicles says this is a little bit of Trey and a little bit off. He says Jimmy to Carolina is his one and only prediction. And the more that I think about it, the more that makes sense. And that Trey footage was absolutely amazing, real talk, regardless of practice. And I to what you said, I can understand how folks that weren't at practice get super excited about, because they didn't see it. And that view was better than the one that came out, because when the one play that came out when he's rolling to his left and he throws the deep ball to Sherfield, even from that angle though, you don't really get the view of what that play looked like compared to what it really was.
Yeah, I mean, there was even a second angle of that throw that came out yesterday. There's a second angle of that, and it's impressive, but it's not near as impressive. It's actually similar to the view that you're talking about, of that Sherfield throw. So yeah, you kind of, you're right about that one, because the angle does decide or show you how amazing some throws are versus not. I think the Stafford throw comes to mind, the no look. We saw it in the Super Bowl and you see the regular play, but when you see it from certain angles, it's like, oh man, that's a big time throw. Like that's a legit no look. So yeah, I think angles definitely do help tell the story a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I think Lance is going to do. I think I'm excited to see what Trey Lance does. I'm excited to see him be the guy for a full season, because I think that there's going to be some ups and downs. I think there's going to be more ups though than downs. And all you need to know, and I said this to you, I think last week again, go back and look at the numbers that he put up against the Houston defense. When everybody wants to say it's just Houston, go look at what he did against Houston. Go look at what Mac Jones, the quarterback in Jacksonville, even the veteran guys that went up against Houston, and compare his numbers to all of them. Josh Allen, I don't think had a very good game when they played. He had and so look at what he did against that team in Week 17, and even to an extent, go look what he did in Week 5. I know that I don't feel like he played all that great in that game, and he didn't. And he missed some throws, and he missed some. His interception played a role in it, but his overall output wasn't that far off of what Jimmy Garoppolo did, even back then. So
yeah, that's a good point. I think everything's just about context as well, and I think that's good context that you're providing. even the I remember tweeting out during the Houston game, like after the first half, I didn't think it looked that great. And I said something along the lines of, this is why you don't box score scout, because if you did, it would look a lot better than what I was visually seeing at that time. But, after taking some time and then going back and rewatching it, still wasn't the best. I'm not saying it was amazing, but there was still 3 or 4 throws, even in that first half, that you're like, oh, geez. Like I don't remember seeing these. So yeah, the flashes have been there the whole time.
Yeah, and all you got to do with that one. It was a rough half, but man, the way that he finished it off just made up for kind of a lot of the mistakes in the beginning. He took off in the second half, so it was really, really impressive. And moving on from Trey, as much as we hate to do it, Jimmy Garoppolo. I know you wanted to have this discussion a little bit. Is his value up or is it down?
Gosh, I kind of in the middle on this one. I feel like there are some people that are using trades in the past to kind of sell it as to why the trade value would be up. People talk about the Carson Wentz trade. People talk about the Darnold trade. And for me, I think those trades work against him just slightly. I think that I think Darnold, you can see a reason why the Panthers would go after him. You're talking about a kid that played for a horrible organization and is, he showed some talent coming out of college, played for a horrible organization. And so you see a team and they could say, oh, well, I think we could fix this kid, right? So you could see why they would make that trade. And then you look at Carson Wentz, who former MVP candidate, probably would have won an MVP had he stayed healthy that year, and did it, by the way, with the coach that is now the head coach of the Colts. So you could see why they would go after Carson Wentz. But when you look at Jimmy, who's going to look at Jimmy, who's 30 years old, and be like, oh man, I can turn him around, especially because he's working with one of the best offensive guys in the game in Kyle Shanahan. So what are you going to do that Kyle hasn't, right? And so to me, I think that those things actually might be driving it down, not to mention that I think the Colts would be a great fit for Jimmy, but they just got burned by the Wentz thing. Are they willing to take that chance again, burn even more capital? And I think the Panthers would be a great fit for Jimmy, but they're in a similar situation. So I think that takes two teams pretty much out of it. You add Carson Wentz to the free agent pool if he does get outright cut. Would you rather pay Carson Wentz $7 million a year to be your starter, or Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million? I mean, are they that much different? And so I think there are some things with those two teams in particular that are driving things down. And we heard a lot of first round picks and all that stuff, but I think it was Peter King came out today or recently and said, hold on, let's slow our roll. Around the league, the talk is about a third round pick. So that's about what I figured. I said, it would be a future fourth that could escalate to a third depending on how he plays. And, that's roughly what we're hearing. So, yeah, I think it's down from what maybe people would have thought it was a week ago.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because there was a report that I saw today, and I don't remember who it was, so apologize to whoever it was that said this, but or wrote it. But basically, what they were saying is that the 49ers might be willing to take a less compensation for Jimmy Garoppolo to get him to a place that he wants to go, than to get the most compensation for him and not worry about working with him. To me, you can take that as them being, okay, that's what we're really doing. Or you can just kind of take the devil's advocate and say, maybe they're saying that because they're not going to get that much, and they're trying to kind of not make it seem like they're trying to save face a little bit on this thing. So I'm not sure where his value is. I would say that I feel like it should start with something similar to the Wentz deal, a third round pick in 2022 and a conditional second for the following year. It starts off as a second, it can go down to a third depending on how much he plays. Because that's really the issue with Jimmy Garoppolo is the injuries, right? When he's been on the field, teams have been successful, and he's shown that he can be successful. I would say even in 2020, if Jimmy Garoppolo plays the full season, that team is probably in the playoffs. They're probably around 8-8, 9-7 if it's Jimmy Garoppolo instead of Nick Mullins, even with all the injuries that they had that season. So I just feel like there's going to be a team that's going to pay. I don't know if it's going to be, we keep hearing this first round thing. I don't think if they get a first round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, they need to go take all their money to Vegas and put it on whatever color they want to spin
Yeah.
the thing on, because that's would be amazing. But I don't think that's it. I think best you're looking at is a third, maybe a second. And if they
Yeah.
and real quick, if they can get 2 picks for him, like we just said, a third and a second, that's better than what they got when they definitely upgraded there, because they only spent a second to get him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, even if they could get a second for him, like imagine buying a car, driving it, putting on 100,000 miles, and then selling that car for the same exact price 5 years later. Like that's a hell of a deal. So that's the way that I see it, right? If they can make that happen, that would be incredible. I mean, just regular depreciation says that thing should be worth way less than what you bought it for. So if you get a second, a third, or even more, like basically what you're talking about, yeah, that would be fantastic for sure.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on. I don't know where this thing's going to land, but we know that he's not going to be back this season or for 2022, and I just want people to stop talking about that, because it's not going to happen. He's already said goodbye. He knows that he's not going to be coming back, and anybody that's really paid attention to the situation, I think, knows that he's not coming back. It's people that really enjoy him, and I do feel like he's gotten the short end of the stick with some of a lot of the things that are said about him. But in general, he's better than than the worst, than his biggest naysayers will tell you, and he's not as good as his biggest fans will tell you. He's in the middle of those two extremes. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It is kind of an interesting contrast though, right? Because I remember a lot of people were like, it's so obvious. Like, listen to what the 49ers are actually showing and telling you. Jimmy's going to be the starter in week 1. I remember, that's what I was being told back then. And now the flip side of it is those same people are now like, well, there's still a chance Jimmy can come back. I'm like, are you not paying attention to anything? Like, it's pretty obvious. So it's funny to be on the opposite side of that now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. He's not going to be back, and it's going to be fun to watch, just like it was when Alex Smith went to Kansas City, right? We were watching the 49ers in 2013, but at the same time, you're kind of keeping an eye on there to see what's going on in Kansas City, just because it's the guy you spent years watching and invest a lot of time in. So I'm sure that'll happen a little bit with Garoppolo in the beginning. We'll see.
Oh, for sure. I think everybody's going to be talking about that. That's Jimmy Garoppolo's not leaving 49ers Twitter for at least a season or two, because people are going to be keeping their eye on his play. Absolutely.
That's for sure. Let's change it up a little bit. We're going to do that. We'll finish this off next week, but we're going to start it up today, and it's going to be a little bit of series of, it's called Stay or Go. We're going to go through position groups, and if the players are going to stay or if they're going to go. And the quarterback's really easy. We already pretty much dissected the first two, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think we're both sitting here saying that Trey Lance is going to be back. He's a stay. Jimmy Garoppolo is a go. So really, in this discussion, when we talk about the 49ers quarterbacks, the only position that you're looking at is, do they bring Nate Sudfeld back, or do they move on from him?
I think he stays, and I think he stays in a similar role to what he was this year. I just don't think Sudfeld's good enough to be like, I don't think he's on anybody's radar as like, oh, we got to have him as our backup quarterback. And for him, you've got a safe spot. Sure, you're going to be a practice squad guy, and they did the right thing by calling you up during the playoffs or whatever to get you that final paycheck. But I think that this is a place that he's comfortable with. I think that it's a place. I think the 49ers are comfortable with him. And like I said, unless a team is just clamoring to have him as their backup or to compete for that backup spot, I don't see him going anywhere. And I just don't think Nate Sudfeld's that guy. So I would imagine that he's back in a similar role next year. What about you?
Yeah, I would say it would make sense to bring him back, because right now you're going into if you get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, you only have one quarterback on your roster. Nate Sudfeld is a guy who you can bring back in, and it's going to be a cheap deal. Let him compete. Even if you bring somebody else off the street to compete with him for that third role, I think that's going to be would make sense. I mean, you can bring him in for a minimum deal, like you said already. Stash him on the practice squad, because I don't think he's the guy that you really want to have be your number 2. But as a third string guy who can help out in the locker room and kind of work with your quarterbacks and be you're not going to have Trey Lance running your scout team in 2022. So maybe that would be his role. But at least you have a guy that's been in the NFL for a while that can do it.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and then sorry everybody, but we have to talk about something other than quarterbacks tonight. We're going to jump over to the other one. This room's a little bit more interesting. It's the running backs. So stay or go with the running backs, and I'll just go through the list and we can talk. I think the first one we're both going to agree on, and that's going to be Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Elijah Mitchell will be here for sure next year, no doubt about it. I don't think there's any question that he'll be back or any scenario where he's gone.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, we know Mitchell's coming back. He was a stud in year one for the 49ers. It'll be interesting to see who they bring in though around him. We know that Trey Sermon, I'm getting ahead of myself there, but there's some guys that are around there. So we know that he's going to be back for sure. Just kind of to go back and forth. What about Jeff Wilson?
Man, I go back and forth on Wilson. I really do. I'm trying to figure out which one, and maybe it's both, but between him and Mostert, which one leaves for Miami? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm leaning towards Wilson will be back. I think the price is right for him. I think they like Jeff Wilson. I like Jeff Wilson, and I figure, with him being healthy as your third back, I don't see how you can hate that. Like Wilson has a lot of talent to me, and he shows flashes. So I would love to have Wilson back, and I think that they actually do bring him back.
Okay, I'm gonna go the opposite direction. I'm gonna say go. Yeah. I'm gonna say that they move on from Jeff Wilson. Maybe this is just because it's the direction that I feel like they should take. But I understand where you're coming from though too. He as a third running back who may or not dress on game days, and if you do have him dress, he's only going to play sparingly. Wilson would be a guy that you'd want to have on your team because he can do those things, and he's shown it this year that he can step in and play well at times, and he has some versatility between what he can do as a running back or running back / fullback at times when they were doing certain things with Debo.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, and then moving on from him, we have Jermichael Hasty, and I think Hasty is an exclusive rights free agent as well.
Yeah, he is. Gosh, I'm gonna lean towards yes, but I could see him being like one of those cuts when they get to training camp type of thing. But I think that just because he was on the field so much in third downs, I personally think the Hasty experience should be over. But I think that they'll probably tender him and bring him back. And being exclusive rights, all you got to say is that we're going to bring him back, and there's no other team that can sign him. So I would imagine that they do that. But at the same time, I also could see him being cut before the season. But that's kind of where I'm leaning with Hasty.
Yeah, I think Hasty will be a guy that they bring back. He's as an exclusive. They have a history of keeping their exclusive rights for agents guys throughout. Mm-hmm. So I would see him come back. He does a pretty good job as a third down back. He made some plays for him here and there. I would like to see Elijah Mitchell catch some of these passes maybe that are going to him. Or one of these other guys that we're going to talk about here, probably the guy we're going to talk up next, I think would be a better option than Hasty. But I do think that Hasty will be back just because of they need to have numbers, and he provides an element. He provides an element that you don't get with Mitchell and these other guys in terms of the speed that he brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you can't say it's third down and Hasty anymore if he doesn't come back. So, yeah, I think he'll be back.
Exactly. And then how about Raheem Mostert? Where does he fall for you?
I think he's going to Miami. I really do. I just, obviously a warm weather guy, likes to surf. There's no taxes here in Florida, no state taxes anyways. I just have a feeling that McDaniel's going to have to bring somebody with him, somebody that he trusts, somebody that he can say, hey, the culture, this is what it is, a guy that he can lean on in the locker room. I could see that happening with a guy that we're going to talk about later probably, but also I could see it happening with Mostert. I think he would be the perfect guy. And I can't see the 49ers giving Mostert more than probably the vet minimum. And I could see Miami giving him a little bit more guaranteed than that. And again, with no state income tax, I think that plays heavy. It's a place he would be comfortable. I think he's gone. I think he's going to Miami.
I do think that it might be a little unlikely that he comes back because somebody else might give him some more money. Um, he's the guy for the 49ers, though. I think they need to try to splurge a little bit, try, even if it's giving them the same money that they gave him this year to keep him. I do feel like they need that. They need that explosiveness in their backfield. I do like Elijah Mitchell, but they need that explosiveness that they get, and I don't want to see that coming from Deebo Samuel down the road, uh, especially with this big contract that's coming up to him. So that's why I lean towards Mostert staying, although I can easily see them moving on. And if Mostert goes out to Miami, I do need to say that real quick. We haven't mentioned this, but I'm sure East Bay Chris is really upset about the fact that River Craycraft became the first 49ers player to follow Mike McDaniel out to Miami. He signed a contract with them earlier today.
That's why he hasn't been on Twitter for a while. That makes sense. He knew it was
That's
coming.
right. No, I've been wondering why it's been quiet. I thought we would have seen something from him, but that's probably it. He's probably under a bridge drinking a beer somewhere right now, trying to make himself feel better,
licking his wounds. Yeah,
exactly. And then that brings us to we got two more to go. Trent Cannon.
No, I don't think Cannon's coming back. I mean, they could maybe use him for the special team side of things, but I don't see him back on this team at all. No.
Yeah, that's a position where they might bring him back and have him compete in camp, but I don't know if if he'd make the final roster. I don't. That's one of those things. Depending on how the roster gets made up, he's just a special teams guy that was really brought in to do nothing other than that because of their need to play some other guys at points. I would say no as well to Cannon. And then that brings us to the last but not least, everybody's favorite Trey Sermon.
Trey area, right? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, he'll be back. Yeah. There's no way you can spend a 3rd round pick and trade up to do so and then get rid of the guy. Like it can't work that way. So yes, he'll 100% be back. No doubt about it.
Yeah, especially with the 3rd round, right? A lot of times you don't get rid of those guys in year one. The 49ers, after 1 year, 49ers are a team that hasn't done that in the past. So I would expect to see Sermon come back, and I would hope to see him be able to stay healthy. He showed some things when he played early on in the season, and then we just didn't see him after that. He had the injury early on against Philly, kind of an explosive run on a toss, and then after that, he had a decent game against Seattle, and I think it was right around the same as what we saw. It might have been even better than what we saw from Elijah Mitchell up in Seattle later on in the year. But, I think Sermon's a guy who can maybe when you're playing with Trey Lance, maybe we're going to see him step up. And maybe that's part of the reason. There's a couple of guys that they drafted on that offensive side that kind of seem more like they were built to be playing with Trey Lance.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that he was brought specifically to play with Trey Lance. And so it would be odd if that is the case to get rid of him before they even have a chance to see it.
Yeah. And then let's take a couple of questions. There's one over here that I do want to get to. I had talked to you a little bit about it. I forgot that we'd had this conversation already earlier in the month, but Sersky brings up the backup situation behind Trey Lance for 2022. And he says that he'd like to see Marcus Mariota to be the backup or Tyrod Taylor. You had mentioned Mariota during our show a few weeks ago. And that is definitely one name. And what are your thoughts on Tyrod Taylor? I don't remember if you brought him up or not.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine. He's like the most popular, like he's the leader in the clubhouse, at least, from 49er fans. And it makes a lot of sense. They've got his ex-coach here. He's a big time veteran, would probably be perfect for that role. I would have no issue with Tyrod Taylor. I just would prefer Marcus Mariota. But, again, chances are Mariota's going to be a little bit more. Maybe he has an outside shot to compete for a starting job. That certainly wouldn't be the case here. I think that's more of a pipe dream. I could see Tyrod actually being the backup. It was just kind of my hope that Mariota would be that guy because I think he would really be perfect for it.
Yeah. I think this is an interesting one. I'm going to kind of throw this out as a question to you too, because Tyrod Taylor is a name that everybody keeps bringing up because of the 49ers bringing in Anthony Lynn to be their run game coordinator. I know that's what he's going to, I think that's the role that he's probably going to end up holding. That's what it seems like with Mike McDaniel going, although that's not the title that he has. If he's such a good fit for the 49ers as the backup, when the 49ers were going through their quarterback scenarios last year, there was, who was it? There was
Dalton,
and
Trubisky.
Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, Mitchell Trubisky, Gardner Minshew. These are all guys that they were rumored to have been with or be interested in, but there was never any talk of Tyrod Taylor, there being interest in Tyrod Taylor coming to the 49ers. So is that really a guy who all of a sudden we're going to think would be on the top of their list?
Yeah, no, that's actually a hell of a point. A hell of a point. I think the Lynn connection is kind of what gets people to think that it could be, but I really didn't even think about that, and you're absolutely right about that. Another guy that I mentioned yesterday, and it just kind of hit me as a possibility. I doubt it happens, but this is a guy that we know Shanahan loves. He's said it a few different times, and it's possible that this guy is going to be a backup this year if he does get cut. And wouldn't it be interesting? Two NDSU guys, Carson Wentz being the backup to Trey Lance for a year.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting.
I think it's unlikely, but that would just be an interesting thought there. I mean, you never know.
No, it's extremely interesting for the reason that we know that if you go back, and I'm just going to throw this up really quick because Christian happens to say Trey Lance equals Carson Wentz 2.0. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with that, but it's interesting that you're putting those two together because Kyle Shanahan has been very effusive in his praise of Carson Wentz, more than any quarterback that they've faced, other than maybe Tom Brady. If we heard them talk about Tom Brady, but with Carson Wentz, he was very open about how much he liked him, and to the point where I even wrote an article back during the season at one point about how, hey, you missed out on Carson, but there's just this Trey Lance guy that you might be able to pull out. That was I actually wrote that back during the off season before the draft. So that would be interesting if they get both those guys in the same building.
Yeah, I would say this too. The reason that I do think it's a slight possibility is I think Carson Wentz has some image rebuilding to do, right? We heard some things coming out of Philly that, maybe he isolated himself, wasn't the best teammate. Obviously, there's a good chance he gets cut after being traded for the big haul. I mean, if your ex-coach that wanted you so bad and traded so much for you is done with you, then who else is going to really want you? Like maybe he even looks at it and just says, hey, sure, I could go start somewhere. I just need a year to get my body right. I need a year to get my mental right. Let me go to San Francisco. There's a chance that I could play a game or two. The way that Trey Lance plays, maybe he gets hurt. At the very least, I could show that I'm a really good teammate. Maybe this team makes a deep run and a lot of stories come out, or Shanahan can coach me and help me improve in some areas and also be an advocate for me. And so, maybe he looks at it like that and makes a good business decision rather than, the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I'm a starter in this league. I deserve to be one, a la Cam Newton, and is willing to take a backup role. So, you never know. You don't know how these guys are thinking. Carson Wentz, I could also see him just retiring and saying, screw it, I'm done with the NFL. So, who knows what actually happens here, but I would like to see it.
Yeah, no, that would be something, because that's very similar to what you were just like, the way that you explained him coming here to rehabilitate his image, coming here to just kind of be tutored under one of the top coaches, offensive minds in the NFL. That's very similar to what Mitchell Trubisky was talking about last year. He ended up going to Buffalo, taking a cheap deal to play for them. I think for basically that reason, he knew that he wasn't really ever going to play up there, but he was going to be able to be around a coach that other teams were going to be interested in. And now maybe he's going to be able to follow him to his next spot and so on. So maybe you're right there. That could be something interesting to follow along there with Carson Wentz. That's a really good point. And maybe what we find out is that the 49ers trade Jimmy Garoppolo to Indianapolis for Carson Wentz and a draft pick, or who knows?
Interesting. Yeah. Jeez.
You
I
know,
don't know if
you threw it
anybody
out
wants
there, so
Carson Wentz salary. I don't know how much is actually getting eaten up by these other teams. It may not be that bad actually for the
yeah,
49ers.
yeah. I know. I was looking at his base salary is like in the 20 million or something. It's
Mhm.
pretty wild. His amount. I don't know what it would be if he gets shipped off to another location or not. But
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely, now we're getting into the money ball, having fun fantasy kind of scenarios. But yeah, I watch how this thing plays out, and we have a month to go. It was a month from yesterday. Yesterday was the 16th, correct? And at 1 o'clock yesterday was 1 month from when free agency officially kicks off, and players are actually going to be able to sign with teams. So we're in it now, and I can't wait to get to March 16th and have some moves or have Garoppolo get traded out and stuff like that, because that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot to watch. It's not, if you're just a football fan or like to pay attention. Yeah, that's a good one. If you like to pay attention to what's going on around the league, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of cool things being talked about. Watson has his case coming up, I believe, like next Tuesday. So we're gonna know a lot about what's gonna happen with guys like Deshaun Watson, and maybe some of these other dominoes start to fall, so that Jimmy trade does become more possible by the time that this new league year starts. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to see that play out, because the 49ers need to make a move. They're going to have to move a bit. They're going to need to move a bunch of stuff around in order to get underneath the cap. So it's going to be kind of, even in this next month, there's going to be some moves that we're going to hear about. So it's going to be fun to watch it all play out. And also, real quick, I put it up already, but Barry Baller says that his favorite Twitter feud is Hammer versus Nails. Thank you, Eric. You know that I win those all the time too. So thank you. No, it's fun. Jessie and I get after each other over there every once in a while.
Yeah, we do. It's like every week the same joke comes up, but it still makes me laugh every time somebody's like, "You guys should do a show together."
Yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun. That's for sure. And you got a show coming up tonight?
I do, yeah. So in about 30 minutes, I'm gonna do a mock draft over on my channel with my co-host. Talk a little bit more about this Trey Lance, these Trey Lance videos, and just some happenings around the NFL. He's a Lions guy, and so they're gonna hang a banner there for Matt Stafford winning a Super Bowl, because that's as close as they're gonna get. So I'm sure he's just gonna love talking about that. I can't wait.
Matthew Stafford. I real quick, since you brought up Matthew Stafford, you're going to talk about him, and we'll wrap this up. We saw yesterday where the poor lady falls off the stage, and Matthew Stafford turns and walks the other way. And I saw this Rams fan tweet out a video of how fast Matthew Stafford went sprinting in the end zone to get after a defensive back who hit the receiver Cooper Kupp in the end zone there at the end of the game. And I was going to tweet out and be a smart aleck. I was going to be like, hey, it would have been nice to have seen him sprint that fast to go help the poor lady that fell off the stage and broke her back. I mean, he's doing the right thing now. And he's, I don't know if you heard, but him and the Rams are going to, take care of her hospital bills and stuff. So
yeah, that's actually more than what he has to do. It was a weird reaction. The only thing I can think of is like my brother-in-law is real squeamish. Even when his kids would get the littlest cuts, he'd like turn his back and like he can't look. Maybe that's where he was going. The only thing that throws me off is the water chug. It's like I don't know. The whole thing was a little bizarre. At least his wife cared, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, she seemed to. Another thing I was going to say is I don't know how much he was really going to build up anyway, based off of the way most of those guys were. I don't think they're feeling very much pain out there. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
So, all right. That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining Hammer Nayles episode 44. Thank you very much for taking the time to jump on with us. Get over to Jesse's channel. He's got a show coming up here. Make sure you're subscribed there. If you can, also hit the like button, subscribe here, and then also make sure you click on that notification so you know every time that we're going live so you never miss a show. But other than that, have a great Thursday, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow with a show, and we'll be back with Jessie next Thursday as well. Take care, everybody.